Well, let's take a deeper look at the political strategy behind these false narratives. Evan Solomon is the publisher of G0 Media, a part of the Eurasia Group. He's in New York, and we're also former colleagues from the Hill. Great to see you, Evan.
Good to see you, Molly.
Evan, when we think of fentanyl, we think of the migrants. I mean, is misinformation fueling this trade war?
Well, there's two kinds of misinformation. There's real misinformation and disinformation, and there's willful tactical uses of it for political purposes. Is this enough of a problem to justify 25% tariffs on Canada and only 10% on China, where most of the fentanyl comes from? Obviously not. So there was a willful distortion of facts, which makes one think maybe this is not at all about immigration, illegal immigration, and fentanyl. It might be about something else, which is a commitment to tariffs.
Yes, and I want to get into that in a second, but is the fentanyl crisis just something that Trump can sell, like to his base, to the public in America?
Well, of course it is, because it's a real problem. I mean, the United States has a real problem with fentanyl. Canada does too. So you have to separate like it's really nothing and dismissing it. So I'm not going to diminish it. And this isn't about being a scold on facts, but the facts matter that the amount of illegal fentanyl entering the United States from Canada is a minute amount compared to where it comes from in the southern border. And therefore, though it's a real problem, it is not a justification for 25% tariffs as some kind of punishment.
So then if we think about the border, Evan, Canada is spending hundreds of millions of dollars to address concerns where there's no data behind it. So what does that do? What's the long-term risk of responding to misinformation with policy changes?
So there are two things. Politics isn't just about facts. It's not a bunch of accountants, right? Politics is a culture. Politics is about how people feel. You know this. You and I worked together on the Hill for a long time. People feel something. They talk about inflation and vibeflation. How do people feel? Part of a job of a politician is to not just convey the facts, and that's important. I'm not diminishing it, but to convey the story of who we are. Economists now measure behavioral economics because how people react are not always rational and by the facts. People have irrational behaviors that impact their choices. So again, I think we should be careful when we're talking about misinformation, disinformation, as if there's some kind of facts and people ought to adhere to them. People are humans. They have lots of ranges of emotion. The job, though, is to tell a story that adheres to facts. But in this case, we're selectively using information. Many of the facts are wrong, and clearly this is part of a larger political agenda. And I say that lest Canada feels overly victimized. Mexico's facing the same thing. The EU is going to face these tariff threats. China's just got 10%, not that we're in the same category as China, but lots of US allies are facing this because Donald Trump has a different type of transformative and a radically transformative agenda.
Yeah. You talked about people reacting. I mean, this photo I want to bring up, we all remember it. Trump standing, overlooking mountains with a Canadian flag. That's where this all started from, manipulated media, right? An AI image of him standing there saying, I want Canada to be the 51st state. What's the long-term strategy here? Because he's still on that rhetoric.
Yeah, first of all, there's a real argument of how to interpret Donald Trump. If people say, do you take him literally or do you take him seriously? He's the president of the United States. You should take him seriously and literally. That doesn't mean he always follows through on what he said. He didn't end the Ukraine war before he took office this time. He likes to negotiate by saying X times 100 and maybe getting X minus 2. So there's a negotiating tactic here. There is a power game tactic. But let's try to understand deeper what's going on. Donald Trump 2.0 is mixing his economic isolationism and his very much belief, and it's a core belief that tariffs are better than income tax. He wants to cut income tax and generate revenue through tariffs. I don't think the math adds up. And the facts of that are going to be really hard for him to figure out, but that's what he believes. But he's got an American economic isolationism with a new foreign policy expansionism, which is incredible. So he's looking at the Panama Canal and Greenland and Canada. Can you imagine? This is stuff we've never seen before. And so, again, I would argue, Molly, that what we're witnessing more profoundly here is in the midst of disinformation, where he owns the means of information. Look, he owns Truth Social. His partner, Elon Musk, owns X. Mm-hmm. This is an administration that has first and foremost said, don't trust anybody, don't trust the media. Then they bought their own media to feed their supporters. And what they've done is they've ended the age of American soft power. And what I mean by that is when America projects outside of its military, its ideals that people like, and so they cooperate. But when you slap tariffs on Canada, that's the end of soft power. And we're witnessing the end of the golden age of American soft power. And that leaves on the table a lot of this stuff: hard power, disinformation, and the law of the jungle.
Yeah, the law of the jungle. That's what a lot of Canadians feel, and they're angry about it. You can feel it. I mean, Trump seems to be picking fights with every country, as you mentioned. What's the end game, though, with us? Because we are different.
Yeah, I think you said something really important, and let's go back to it. People feel something. Like you and I have never, in my lifetime, I've never seen Canadians boo the American national anthem at a hockey game or at a basketball game. I mean, it's never happened. And there's a sense of betrayal that's profound. Like people are like, wait a second, what? You're trying to destroy our economy? You regard us as like the 51st state, like you can just take us over. Remember, in 1812, what was it? A mere matter of marching. So I think people feel betrayed. And we're in an election cycle in Canada, so patriotism is being stoked by political leaders for obvious reasons. And so we've got to, understand that emotion. But when you're negotiating with Donald Trump, if you're a political leader, you can't do it emotionally, because you can't mix the political and the personal, because that's what he does. You've just got to present the facts without appeasement. You've got to have the big stick, which is you want to tariff us, we will tariff you right back. And that, you hope, opens up some space to do what he likes to do, which is negotiate. But I think you've nailed it. Emotionally, it will take a long time for Canadians to trust the U.S. as their closest friend again. Not the people not Americans, but the administration.
This has changed. This has changed everything. Evan, I want to ask, one of Trump's biggest claims about Canada is that we got a better deal in the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, right? NAFTA 2.0. Is that true? Is there truth to that?
No. Look, first of all, Donald Trump is complaining about a deal that he signed in 2020, the new NAFTA deal. He made it. He signed it. His people negotiated, Robert Lighthizer and his whole team. And now he's saying we're getting ripped off. So he's complaining about his own deal that's only 4 years old. And he's trying to win a prize and have a trade war over something that we already have, which is free and fair trade. So is there a $250 billion trade deficit that he claims? And he's said that multiple times. Absolutely not. It's under $100 billion if you count energy.
Okay. Because
24% of the energy that the U.S. imports comes from Canada. Our crude oil comes from Alberta to the Midwest refineries. They need it. They are built to refine that kind of heavy crude, and they need it, and their gas prices dependent on it. So, but if you took out, and by the way, they get that oil at a discounted price.
Right.
One, because there's no other customers, and two, they have to do the refining. So, I mean, some Canadians argue that Canada is subsidizing the U.S. We certainly give them the best deal on oil they get anywhere in the world. But if you take out that and you add services in, because we use a lot of U.S. services, actually, they're running a surplus with Canada. So the point is, in trade deficits, it's not, we should be careful understanding a trade deficit as always a bad thing.
Right.
Because it can be a good thing if you're importing stuff you need at a good price, as the U.S. does with our oil. So we have a healthy, robust, free trade agreement that he negotiated. But the new reality is, and this is, why is he doing it? He needs to cut taxes, and he doesn't want to raise taxes. And the only way to raise revenue is to increase tariffs. And here's a fact for you because you're in the disinformation information business. Well, how much can he raise with tariffs, right? Well, the last round of tariffs in Trump 1.0 raised about $100 to $150 billion. Let's say he doubles that again, another 100. Let's call it $500 billion. Let's call it $800 billion. It wouldn't even matter. How much does the US government take in revenue from tax, right? Tax revenue? $4.3 trillion. So how do you replace the revenue you get from income tax, $4.3 trillion, with a couple $100 billion you're going to get from tariffs? It ain't gonna happen.
It doesn't add up, but as long as people don't know that, it's a winning strategy. And I have 30 seconds here, and I want to ask, like, why is the misinfo strategy working for Trump and it doesn't work for other people?
Well, first of all, the environment has changed, right? People watching this broadcast are subjected to more vectors of information and disinformation than at any other time in history, right? And, we in Canada talk about the quote unquote two solitudes, French and English. In the United States now, it's two realities, red reality and blue reality. They don't look at the same things. They don't watch the same shows. They don't read the same newspapers. And then there's multiple new realities because of information sources that are popping up, blogs, podcasts. So, disinformation is being weaponized at a hyper speed by bad actors all over the world. All Donald Trump has done, and he's done it, strategically well, is recognize that they've got a disinformation environment, co-opted the system himself by buying one, Truth Social, or in Elon Musk's case, X. So they own them. And then they're going to battle within this new disinformation environment. That gives them a huge advantage, and it allows them to win where others are losing.
Thanks, Evan. Great to have you on the show.
Always a pleasure, Molly.